We've all seen the movies, the viral outbreaks, The Walking Dead.
We all know the Hollywood movies. But Clairvius Narcisse was conscious. 18 years later, he walked back, trapped in a living, breathing chemical nightmare.
Join me as I explore this possibility through the lens of dying light. What if I told you that in 1962, a man was officially declared dead by Western-trained doctors? He was placed in a wooden coffin. He was buried under 6 feet of solid earth. And then, 18 years later, he walked into a crowded marketplace to greet his sister. This isn't an urban legend. This is the horrifying, scientifically documented story of Clairvius Narcisse, the man who became a living, breathing zombie. Our story begins in the spring of 1962 in the rural village of Lester, Haiti. A 40-year-old farmer named Clairvius Narcisse checked into the Albert Schweitzer Hospital. He was in terrible shape. He was burning up with a fever, screaming in agony from full-body muscle aches and coughing up blood. The doctors were baffled. His symptoms didn't match any standard localized infections. Over the next 48 hours, his condition deteriorated rapidly. His lips turned blue. His body temperature plummeted. His respiratory system began to fail. On May 2nd, 1962, his breathing stopped completely. His pulse vanished. 2 attending physicians, including an American-trained doctor, examined him. They checked his eyes, listened for a heartbeat, and officially pronounced him dead. The next morning, his devastated sister Angelina identified the body in the morgue. Clairvius was placed in a wooden casket, the lid was nailed shut, and he was buried in a standard grave in his hometown. Case closed, a tragic, ordinary death, except for Clairvius, the nightmare was just beginning, because while he was lying in that dark coffin, listening to the dirt hit the wood above him, he was completely awake. Fast forward 18 years to 1980. Clairvius' sister, Angelina, is walking through a crowded village market. Suddenly, a man in ragged clothes approaches her. He looks like a ghost. He is worn, heavily traumatized, and aged. Angelina steps back in horror, but before she can scream, the man looks her in the eye and whispers a childhood nickname, a secret, affectionate name known only to their immediate family. To prove who he is, he begins detailing intimate family arguments and secrets from decades ago. It was Clairvius. The village was paralyzed with fear. How could a man who had been rotting in a grave for nearly 2 decades be standing in the midday sun? When investigators, journalists, and doctors finally sat him down, the story he told wasn't supernatural. It was something much worse. It was targeted, chemical warfare on the human mind. Clairvius explained that he had gotten into a bitter, violent dispute with his own brother over land inheritance. Unwilling to kill him outright, his brother took a darker path. He hired a Bokor, a Haitian voodoo sorcerer who practices black magic, to turn Clairvius into a zombie. But how does that actually work? Years later, a Harvard ethnobotanist named Wade Davis traveled to Haiti to investigate the Narcisse case. What he found was a terrifyingly brilliant mixture of chemistry, neurobiology, and psychological torture. The Bokor didn't use magic. They used a top-secret chemical cocktail known as zombie powder. The active ingredient, tetrodotoxin. This is the deadly neurotoxin found in pufferfish. It is roughly 1,200 times more poisonous than cyanide. When a Bokor slips a precise, non-lethal dose of tetrodotoxin onto a victim's skin, it blocks the sodium channels in the nervous system. The victim is entirely paralyzed. Their heart rate and breathing slow down to a fraction of a beat per minute, so faintly that even trained doctors using 1960s stethoscopes can mistakenly declare the person dead. Clairvius revealed the sheer terror of this paralysis. He told investigators he heard the doctors pronounce him dead. He felt the cold sheet pulled over his face. He felt his sister crying over his body. He even retained a scar on his cheek, from where a nail had grazed his face when they sealed the coffin. He was a prisoner inside his own corpse. But the powder was only step one. A few nights after the burial, the Bokor returned to the graveyard, and dug Clairvius up. Because he had been buried alive, the mild oxygen deprivation had left him weak and disoriented. The sorcerer pulled him from the dirt, beat him, tied him up, and forced a second drug down his throat. This was a paste made from Datura stramonium, known locally as the zombie cucumber. Datura contains powerful, dangerous hallucinogens like scopolamine. When administered daily, it completely strips away a person's memory. It induces heavy delirium and leaves the victim in a permanent, highly suggestible, dreamlike state. Under the influence of this drug, Clairvius was trafficked to a remote sugarcane plantation in northern Haiti. For 2 years, he was forced into brutal slave labor alongside dozens of other drug-induced zombies. He had no memory of his past, no free will, and no identity. He was what Haitian culture calls a zombie travail, a zombie of work. He only escaped because the plantation owner eventually died and the overseers fled. The daily doses of Datura stopped. Over several agonizing weeks, as the chemical fog finally cleared from his brain, Clairvius remembered his name. He remembered his brother's betrayal. Terrified, he fled into the countryside, hiding in absolute secrecy for 16 years. He only dared to return to his village after he received word that his vengeful brother had passed away. To the Western world, a zombie is a monster that hunts you. But if you look at Haitian history, a history scarred by centuries of actual brutal slavery, the zombie takes on a completely different meaning. In Haiti, a zombie isn't a monster to be feared, it is a victim to be pitied. It is the ultimate tragedy, a person whose soul and free will have been stolen, forcing them back into the chains of slavery. Clairvius Narcisse's case remains the most thoroughly vetted, scientifically investigated account of zombification in human history. His medical records are real, his death certificate is real, and his nightmare was entirely human. He lived out the rest of his days as a free man, finally passing away, for good this time, in 1994. So are zombies real? The answer is yes. But the real monsters aren't the ones climbing out of the graves. They're the ones holding the powder. If you want to dive deeper into the dark history of real-world mysteries, hit that subscribe button. And let me know in the comments, what would you do if you were trapped in your own body, listening to your own funeral? Thanks for watching and see you next time.